have Ohio State and Notre Dame established what is going to be the new normal for teams that expect to play in the national championship game with gaudy numbers in name, image, and likeness. What's up, kinfolk? It's RJ Young. I am not on a step mill. If this is your first time watching the #1 college football show, thank you for being here. We keep it raucous and rolling. There are more than 130,000 subscribers to this community, and we would love for you to join us here. And if you like it, hit that subscribe button. It costs nothing. It's free. And ring the bell if you don't want to miss any of the segments that we upload here. We talk college football 24/7, 365 days a year. And I like to pose a question here that I would like you to answer in the comments to keep the conversation rolling. Do you think you're going to have to spend around $21 million to play for the national championship in 2025 and beyond? I ask this because we're looking at a couple of programs who play for the national championship in what was a close game up until it wasn't, that spent more than $20 million on players. Just players, not salaries for coaches, not what it costs to outfit them, to feed them, to send them to school, just on NIL payments. We know this because the good folks at Sportico actually did a really great job of tracking down where the money was coming from at Notre Dame, and they came to a number of $20.5 million spent in 2023. This is a big number. It's a large number. It also is about what you would expect, right? Oregon reportedly spent around $23 million. Ross Bjork went on the record with Yahoo Sports to say that they spent around $20 million at Ohio State. Figures vary. And then we have some teams that are on the outside looking in. Teams like Penn State, teams like Georgia, and notably Alabama. I thought it was interesting that a piece in The Athletic pointed to whether or not Alabama and Georgia are falling behind in the college football playoff national championship race, in large part because they might be being outspent. Then the number that they came up with in that particular story for Georgia was from Classic City Collective, who they reported spent about $1.1 million per month on payments for football. Okay. Last year, also according to The Athletic, Carson Beck rated around $1.5 million to play starting quarterback at Georgia. That number is twice as much at the University of Miami, if you believe the lower figure, making between $3 and $4 million, depending on who you want to talk to. I find that to be particularly interesting because it's not as much as you would expect Georgia to spend. You would expect Georgia to be one of those top spending schools, and you expect Alabama to be one of those top spending schools, given not just that they expect to play for national championships, expect to win the SEC championship, but that they have fan bases that are willing to foot the bill. They are willing to make this work. Yeah, Alabama, the in-house NIL collective, if you will, does a lot of that work for the University of Alabama. But I thought it was kind of interesting that even Nick Saban was on his athletic director, Greg Byrne, about what needed to happen at Alabama when they were still winning. He would say the dinosaurs did not adapt. His way of saying the reason the dinosaurs went extinct is because they didn't adapt. So you always need to be adapting, and that's what Nick Saban has done better than anybody else until he retired. He was always willing to push forward change, even if he didn't particularly like the style or direction it was going in. I remember vividly him watching Johnny Manziel pick apart his defense and going, okay, I don't particularly like having to have a guy that is going to make plays with his legs at quarterback, but it seems that is the way that the sport is going. So go get me Blake Sims. Go get me Jalen Hurts. Go get me Tua Tagovailoa, guys that can do RPO type stuff. Go get me guys that can take care of themselves in the pocket. When Ole Miss was able to go at warp speed against them and other programs able to do the same, not let you get set at the line of scrimmage and are manipulating substitution rules, he would go on a rant and say, is this what we want the sport to be? Because we don't want the defense to get set? Not necessarily, Nick, because people like to see pass plays, explosive plays, and touchdowns. Saban wanted to see a grind people into dust kind of game. It's the one that Georgia likes to play. It's the one that Notre Dame likes to play. It's the one that Michigan likes to play. And if you can do it, that's great. But when he was finding out was two things. You got to be big up front, offensive line, defensive line. You have to be more athletic and more talented at both of those spots. And then you got to have wide receivers that can take the top off the defense. Devontae Smith won the Heisman Trophy for Nick Saban. People forget that, right? Derrick Henry is another example of we just got that one guy, but being able to meld that offense around what you have. At Georgia, they lacked that one guy on offense. We thought it might be Dylan Bell. We thought it might be Oscar Delp. We thought it might be Nate Frazier. We thought it might be. We thought it might be. We thought it might be. It never actually came into fruition. They went and got that guy in Zachariah Branch. Probably paid a lot of money to get him from USC as an All-American kick returner and a more than capable wide receiver. And that was a program that was deficient at wide receiver. They did not have people that could catch the football regularly. Notre Dame decided it was going to go all in on its offensive line and defensive line. And I think one of the reasons they got ran through is they didn't have all of their sort of pieces available to them. Now, neither did Ohio State, but that's also going back to depth and what did you spend it on? Where is it? They're very young at wide receivers. As a matter of fact, Jaden Greathouse became their first 100-yard receiver in the 2023 season in a college football playoff game. Okay? Now, you're getting Jeremiah Love back. That's huge. He didn't do much against Ohio State, never really got a chance to do much against Ohio State. And you're going to enter the C.J. Carr era, which is going to have a lot to do with how good or bad you're going to be. But the folks that probably feel the best about this right now are the University of Texas and Penn State University. University of Texas because they spend with everybody else. And they're going to be able to add and pick and choose and keep players that they might normally lose because the number that they are demanding now is not one that they're willing to meet. Texas, if they think you're good, they'll meet it. Same thing with Ohio State. Same thing apparently with Penn State. Penn State wants to keep Drew Aller. They believe in Drew Aller. They wanted to keep Katron Allen and Nick Singleton, along with Dennis Sutton, right? Dennis Sutton. My bad, Denai. I don't know that I'm going to pick that team to be my number one team or even a number 5 team because James Franklin and Penn State have shown me that if you have a 5, 4, 3, 2, or 1 next to your name, it's probably going to end up for being a loss for them and a win for you. It's really difficult to make a team one of the top teams in college football when they can't beat a top team in college football. Oregon is going to feel real good about themselves too. They are willing to spend with everybody. The difference, I think, with Penn State and or Oregon and or Texas is somebody's won a national championship, somebody is not. Until you break through, we're going to think this about you. It's going to be at the top line of everything that people say about Dan Lanning's Oregon. Could they win the Big Ten championship? Yes. Are they going to make the college football playoff, be a Final Four team? Probably. Are they going to win a national championship? Well, until they do, they haven't. I think that's all important. You're also seeing more of the haves and have-nots. And I probably need to do a segment about this, but I'm going to nudge at it now. Ted Cruz is the Commerce Chair in the new administration, Donald Trump's administration going in 2025. The reason I point that out is he's said that he wants to federalize some laws around name, image, and likeness and make it equal for everybody. I find this to be a really fascinating thing to look at, particularly on that, because bipartisan support is behind this. There's a lot of people that believe that the sport is due some regulation because it feels like the wild, wild west to him. And he put together something like a bill in 2023, and I thought there were some really important provisions in it that are going to allow for a little bit of sunlight and also some rules that you can enforce, because what good is a rule that you don't enforce? Not a rule at all. So one of the things that I wanted to point out for the sake of this particular segment is that the bill that he had put forward at the time before becoming the Commerce Chair said it allows athletic associations or conferences to enforce recruiting, transfer, and eligibility rules, and it allows athletic associations to create a public database used to help student athletes and third parties determine the fair market value of NIL services based on an anonymized NIL data from those institutions. So you get to see what fair market value is because everybody putting it out there, and you get to hide behind anonymity. You also are going to change the Sports Agency Act to reflect better standards, right? So the Sports Agency Responsibility Act says that you are required to act in good faith. And what he has wanted in this bill is to require that third parties like sports agents protect student athletes by requiring any third party seeking to represent a student athlete to A, disclose if they are registered with an athletic association, and if not registered with an athletic association, to obtain written consent from the student athlete or parent, depending, that acknowledges the third party is not registered with an athletic association. So you get to know which name, image, and likeness collective is associated and which one is not. I say nothing of the same thing with the sports agencies that want to do business with these student athletes, as they keep calling. I call them players because it's simpler, it's easier, and it's cleaner. There is no such thing as a student athlete anymore, as much as people want to believe that, because once you start getting paid to do a job, you're a professional. That's what that means. That they still have to go to class is really what we're arguing about, what we're fighting about. And I think that there's even going to be some things about that where, like, the Illinois was trying to push through a bill that said if an athlete made more than $250,000, every dollar over should count against, their scholarship aid and whatnot. And I don't think that's going to help you in your recruiting. Not until something across the board is done. And unless you want to be uncompetitive, that's what it is. So Cruz has also said on his podcast, right now, the current world of college sports is the Wild West. Name, image, and likeness are open transfers. We're going to address it. Again, I think this is something that the conferences want. They backed his bill in 2023, SEC, Big 12, all of them. They all thought it was a good idea, and many of them have said, we are all but begging Congress, the Senate, to come up with laws for this. But there hasn't been an incentive to do that. And now we're looking at Ted Cruz perhaps being the person that gets to put down the framework in the first steps toward what actually might be nationalizing the sport when it comes to name, image, and likeness, and getting us closer to that college football czar, college football commissioner that so many people seem to want.